we've been mentioning this morning, 376 passengers on board the Komagata Maru, one of whom was your grandfather. Let's look at his picture first of all so we know exactly whom we're talking about. Harnaam Singh Sohi. Here he is. What was his story, Sukhi, in terms of how he ended up on board and why he wanted to come to Canada?
Well, he's about 36 years old when he was on the Komagata Maru, and his whole idea was to come to Canada to have a better life and to provide for his family. He wanted his children to have a better future, and that's why he wanted to come to Canada.
So he never ended up even setting foot on Canada, did he? He was kept on board the ship in Vancouver, in the harbour there in Cole Harbour for 2 months and then went back?
Yes, he was one of the 376 passengers that were also denied food and water for the 2 months. And then he was sent back to India. Luckily, he was one of those passengers that made it back safely to India, but there were many that didn't.
And did he ever try to return to Canada later in his life?
He actually refused to come to Canada after the incident. However, he did want his children to come, so my grandma was able to come, and then some of her siblings were able to come through her.
So he did have a chance, but then he refused after what had happened to him. When did you learn that you had a family connection to this story?
The sad thing is, you know, I'm born in Canada, and so is my father, yet it wasn't through the school systems that I learned about the Komagata Maru, you know, growing up. And the stories, we just didn't talk about them as a child, so I was actually a first-year university student taking a Punjabi language course when our professor wrote a poem about the Komagata Maru, and I was just so shocked that something like this had taken place in Vancouver and that I had never heard of it. And that's when I went to my father to talk to him about the Komagata Maru incident, and that's when he informed me that my great-grandfather was one of the passengers.
And then tell me about that revelation, because what did it make you feel in terms of, well, as you said, the shock of learning that connection, but also feel about the country that had been where you've lived all your life?
I was staggered. You know, I could not believe that all these passengers were denied food and water and that they were detained for 2 months and then sent back. I was hurt due to the discrimination and the racist laws that were passed during that time.
Even though it was long ago, 1914, in a very different climate, it still had that effect on you.
Yes, it did, because, you know, a lot of these people, they didn't make it back safely. And again, they were coming to this country with the intention of working hard and providing for their family. And they were part of the British Commonwealth, and they were under the understanding that they could travel anywhere where there was under the British Empire. So, you know, there's a lot of hurt feelings there.
So in 2008, Stephen Harper, Prime Minister of the day, at that huge Sikh Canadian gathering, offered an apology. We're looking at pictures of it there. But it wasn't in the House of Commons, so it wasn't on the record. And many people were not fully satisfied. Were you part of that group?
Yeah, I was also not satisfied. I was actually not even informed that this apology was taking place, and I heard about it after the fact. And this apology took place in a park in Surrey during a festival. In my opinion, that wasn't the time or the place to give an official apology. And you know, these laws, these discriminatory laws and racist laws that were passed by our Parliament. So I think it's coming back full circle to have this apology and an official apology in the House of Commons.
That will happen today, this afternoon, 3:15, when the Prime Minister will issue that formal apology on behalf of the Government of Canada. And you're going to be there to hear it in person. Now, why is it important for you to be there and hear it yourself?
You know, I'd like to be there in remembrance of those passengers that are no longer with us. And also to be there and be present that the Government of Canada is acknowledging and being held accountable for their actions in 1914. And I'd really like to see that, you know, things like this don't happen again, and that we learn from our history.
I guess really, what does it change, though, these words? What does it change, really, for you, both maybe on a political but also on the personal level?
I think the sad thing is that a lot of people still aren't aware of the Komagata Maru incident, and this apology, I can only hope, continues to build awareness and open dialogue about what took place. But I still think this doesn't close a chapter on Komagata Maru, and that we need to continue to ensure that this history is also included in our school textbooks, that we continue to build awareness and make this a part of Canada's story. It's not just about South Asians or people who came from India in 1914. This is part of Canada's history.
Sukhi, thank you very much for being my guest today. I appreciate it. I appreciate hearing your great-grandfather's story, and we'll be looking for you there in the house as this happens this afternoon. Thank you very much.